Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Traffic Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Thursday, October 23rd. Once again, a little bit of a different day than yesterday. I feel like that's been the trend where we're getting, if you look on the left of my spreadsheet, and I'll go over there right now so that you can see this a little bit more clear. But we're getting these days where one day looks pretty good. Then the next day, we kind of get a little bit of a sell off. Then the next day, we get a little bit of more green on the screen. And we're getting a lot of back and forth price action. You'll see that in the chart, in the index charts when I bring that up very shortly. But for today, it's the areas that really outperformed today. Crude had a big day. Crude was up decently. That drove some of the energy stocks that you could see on the screen. Also, some good earnings in energy stocks. But OIH was your leader. That was up over 5% today. So very strong there in energy. Also, XOP. So do I have that on my spreadsheet or not? But that was up 3.8% for the day. That was also particularly strong. Aerospace and defense, good earnings driving that as well, up 3.7% for the day. Quantum stocks, I'm sure you probably, if you were around trading today, you probably heard enough about them today. Some speculation in regards to whether the government will be looking at those companies for stakes. There's a story out last night about the Wall Street Journal, $10 million that they're looking at, which is basically a very small, very small like stake to take. But then there was a later story out. There's several stories out that went back and forth about whether or not there's any validity to that. The last story that I heard was that yes, the administration may be looking at some of the quantum names, but it's in the very early stages. Regardless, that caused that group to go pretty decently. In fact, all the semis were strong today. The SMH ETF was up 1.8% today. The VIX was down 7% for the day, and crypto's got going a little bit today. Also, kind of confirming the risk on that you saw today, up 2.2%. So let's jump over to some charts and look at where we are at this point. All right, so we've got the SPY chart up first, and we're knocking on we're knocking on the week's highs again. So don't forget, by the way, reminder that we've got a CPI report out tomorrow at 8:30. We haven't had much economic data because of the government shutdown, but you're going to get the CPI report tomorrow. Let's see what they're looking for, by the way, in that report for tomorrow. Let's see if there's an estimate. They're looking for month over month zero point 0.4, which is kind of a hot reading. The core CPI month over month, they're looking for 0.3%. Again, the month is the most important. Year, you'll also get the year data that'll be tweeted out tomorrow. But reminder that all they basically do is just add the current month with the previous 11 months, and that's how they get that's how they come up with the number. They're estimated 3.1. So they just drop off the last month and just basically sum up the last 11 reports plus the new month. So the new month is always most important. Let me get back to what I was saying here about the indices. Yeah, it's been a lot of back and forth, and we're at the back to the week's highs. Notice we haven't been able to get through those previous highs, but if you watched my video yesterday, you know I've been talking a lot about this. Is that we're just basically in a range right now. I will tell you we've broken out when we've actually broken out because it's been this just back and forth. Really, if you cut out this big red move from 2 Fridays ago, and if you start here, going back to where we were yesterday, um, we basically just came back to that area. I will say to be positive about this is that when we come in, like yesterday when we tested support, we held it and gave a nice end of day trading movement in the afternoon. So you are getting those opportunities, these ranges to trade. To really, day trading is works better in this environment than swing trading when we kind of just spin the tires, spin the wheels round and round and not make any major movement in regards to overall levels. But obviously we're moving back and forth in a range. So that's what so I would be watching, this, top of the range where we were a couple weeks ago. That's right around 673, 674 in the S&P, and let's see if we could punch out. Qs, and again, this is all basically. I'll go through these. I'll try to go through these pretty quickly, but it's all the same. We're just trading in a range right now. We're very close to the top end of the range. I will say that, but we'll see if we can have some consistency and punch out. Um, that's where we are for the Qs. And again, you've kind of saw this. This is where we were earlier in the week. You know, movement up in the beginning of the day, and then trickle down, trickle down, trickle down, and then yesterday had that big move down. But so we're back. We're back to the levels that we were at towards the beginning of the week. And then IWM finally has a little bit more of a downward bias to it. It's inside value for the week, where SPY and Qs are above the value area, and really that level we hit that resistance at the beginning of the week. Haven't really been able to return back there. IWM was up 8 tenths. I think that's right. No, IWM was at 1.3%, and resistance is 8 tenths away, up at 248.29. So there you go. So I think what I've been trying to do is just kind of understand what this market is doing right now, which is just kind of churning. And again, we'll see if we do get breakouts. It's not far. I'm not going to make the prediction of when that's going to happen, but as I said, probably one of the biggest themes that I talked about in yesterday's video is just like silver linings that we're seeing, and I think that's coming out in the earnings reports that we're seeing. I'll give you a couple examples. I mentioned the aerospace and defense group, so let me bring up that chart and a couple names that drove that. But I've been a fan of this group for a while. Is this at new highs? No, and I would watch this 246.59. So again, we're kind of just a lot of things are just kind of butting up against resistance and not really able to take that next step yet. I don't know. Maybe it's the CPI report. Maybe it's more earnings reports that we need to get through. Maybe that meeting that's supposed to happen with China is supposed to, will kind of get us to break out. But still a powerful move today. Here's XAR on the daily chart, and this looks really good when you look at it on the daily chart. Right, nice movement here and getting back to the highs. Again, you're just going to have to get through that resistance on the 1 hour chart. A couple names that drove this: CRS had a big day. So that's been the theme, and I've talked about that probably every day this week about names, earnings names, excuse me, names that are reporting earnings that people aren't looking at first that are going higher. So CRS was one of those names of 22%. You know what I mean? Like everybody's looking at Netflix, everybody's looking at Tesla. If they're looking at the bigger names, IBM is another one, but they're kind of missing, and it's not missing, I should say. It's really just kind of names that are just a little bit second tier or third tier names. This is Hexcel Corporation. This name, if you're not familiar with it, I don't blame you. But this manufactures markets reinforcement products, composite materials, engineered products used in commercial aerospace, space, defense, electronics, general industrial, recreation markets for a variety of end products. So that's been the story, and you got a couple names like After Hours too that you may not be like playing these names, but there's Comfort Systems. This is another this is another name. I mean, these are big moves that are happening in some of these names. NXT, last I saw, was up decently too, which is more in line with solar. So that's a nice move for NXT. I'm going to go through a couple other charts, but really, that's why we continue to kind of compile an earnings list, and I don't say, oh, I'm only going to concentrate on, high growth tech, right? Or I'm only going to concentrate on really super high growth. Why do that? Why not look at all the companies that are available to you to see what's going on? Another name that had good earnings too. This is a name I actually went long yesterday, and I didn't realize I went long on the move in Crude yesterday. I took it off because I just didn't want the earnings exposure. But look at Valero today, up 7%. That was a real nice chart that I kind of picked up on yesterday. And this kind of, if you look at the refiners, because energy was one of your top, or was the top performing group today. MPC also made a very nice move. PSX I also took a look at today, but this has to get through it actually did get through the first area of resistance, but you've got some more resistance up there too. So, I would selectively take a look at what energy's been a tough trade. I like to trade the refiners. They seem to offer a little bit better opportunities, and that's something that I'll be watching closely next. A couple other groups that I thought have been and are interesting is the optical names. LITE, back and forth price action here. I would watch this name and I would pay attention to 172. Also, Corning, has just been kind of hanging out here and putting in a bull flag here. So that's another name I would pay attention to. CIEN has been super strong. That name has been stronger than the other names recently, and that's very close to the highs. Another name I've been impressed with is Pure Storage. Right, Pure Storage really didn't sell off much. Right, a lot of areas got really had corrections and high growth and some of the momentum trade, but there's a few of these names that really didn't. Pure Storage was one of those names that didn't really correct, and this is a high growth name. CLS is another name too. I think that's a new closing high today for CLS, but I think I may have talked about CLS in yesterday's video. Arista Networks did well today. Right, so you definitely had that theme come back. Remember, Arista Networks went down on I forget which customers of theirs may not be using some of their products, but they kind of got bought back up. Couple names that I've been watching very closely. Robinhood. I got back involved in Robinhood. Yeah, I mean sometimes you're going to not shaken out, but if you're honoring it and if you're being disciplined, right? And for me, once this breached the value area, that was my stopping point for Robinhood. So I'm going to honor that. Now it's still closed below the value area yesterday, even though it put in a nice hammer bar. But I did get back involved in Robinhood. I've got a little bit more higher conviction in that one. KTOS, going back to the defense group, right? This looks interesting in here. Right? It also did not close on the lows yesterday. Still kind of carving out an area in here. Sticking with companies that start with K. Look at KRMN today, right? Carmen Holdings is another aerospace defense company, up 6% today and out to new highs. Couple, I noticed this one early on in the day. CrowdStrike. This is a nice looking chart, guys. Look at this nice little cup and maybe a little handle here. Right, so I like this. CrowdStrike looks pretty good here, and it closed right around the highs of the day today too. Very nice. I had mentioned Palo Alto earlier in the week. Right, that's also doing pretty decently. ZS also looks pretty good too. Zscaler. So all of a sudden, the cyber names kind of coming along pretty decently. What else did I want to cover? Maybe a couple semi names. Applied Materials looks very interesting here. Nice looking candle for the day, bullish engulfing. CRDO, which I know is a retail favorite, is also coming around here, and it's been sticking around this level. It's been holding the 130 level, so it's trying to turn the corner here. That's a very nice looking candle. Its name was up 10% today. Micron also looks pretty good. Look at this. Look at this name, by the way, SanDisk. Huge day today, up 13%. So, it's when you look back, when you go through some of these charts, you don't see any. And this is why I try to share some of these names that really held up, did not really sell off a lot with high growth. We call that relative strength, of course, and really impressive. Some of these names. So I think the main question for tomorrow is what the CPI report is going to be, whether the indices can take that next leg higher. I think that we are going to get into at this point, we're going to get into stronger seasonality, and it's nice to see. As I had said yesterday, I kind of viewed what happened to some of the growth names, like the shakeout in some of these names, really good for sentiment, which was running too hot. So I think that's good. You kind of get that reset button, right? Even though the CNN fear and greed model for sentiment to me is not very good. I see a lot of people showing that, oh my God, it hit fear yesterday. It's not a very good model to begin with. But regardless of that, it's still kind of indicating that there is some things that are off those high super levels of high sentiment. So I'll leave it there, guys. Have a great night and see you tomorrow.